Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited. Today I have on Katie, and she is somebody that I met in a course that we were doing together, and we just really align with each other. She is into yoga, meditation, mindfulness. She is someone who lives with chronic pain condition, and she is into information. She's a health enthusiast, and she's got a child with some mental health struggles, and she's starting a new podcast. And so I really just wanted her to have her on our show today so that we can just have a conversation about parents and teens and our kids and what we find valuable to ourselves. So welcome, 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 Katie. How are you?
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for having me. I'm good.
Um, I will tell you a little bit about Katie, but then I really am going to jump in and just let Katie kind of talk to you. She's a mom, she's a seasoned nurse, she's a yoga teacher, and she's a host of a soon to be released podcast, Mom on the Verge. Katie has been passionate about all things health and wellness from a very young age. However, after battling postpartum depression after the birth of her first child, becoming a chronic migraine sufferer in her mid 30s and parenting a teenager with significant mental health struggles. She was forced to examine the impact of mental health has on her physical health and how intimately those two things are connected. Taking a deep dive into the mind body connection, Katie became a certified yoga instructor, a regular meditator, and a warrior for improving mental health. Katie believes in the power of authentically sharing our truth to help heal ourselves and others, the importance of community, and how love and compassion can be spread outward like a ripple in a pond to create a kinder, safer, and more equitable world. In her free time, Katie enjoys practicing yoga, hiking, hanging with her kids, husband, and reading all things that are spiritual. I will drop in the show notes where you can reach out to Katie later if you want to get to know her a little bit better. But let's just kind of get into it. The first thing I wanted to ask you is Mom on the Verge. If you want to talk a little bit about what that podcast is going to be about so that the listeners, if they're interested in adding a new podcast to their list, they can look for you.
Okay, so it's looking like I'm going to be releasing it towards the end of July. So you can look out for it then. But basically, the podcast is its aim is to build community and improve mental health. And we're going to do that through various different ways. I'm going to be having specialists come on, therapists, mindfulness practitioners, teachers, I have a woman in her PhD program talking about social emotional learning for teachers, as well as people who have gone through pretty significant struggles in their lives and come out the other side having gained a lot of wisdom from those struggles. And they're going to share their stories, and they're going to talk about what they learned and how they got through it and what they used to get through it. And I think, sharing stories is really powerful because it helps us to feel less alone. It helps us to realize that, there are other people going through what we're going through, and we don't have to feel so isolated. And so I really want to highlight a lot of people's stories in hopes that other people will connect with those stories. And it will just help them push through whatever difficult thing that maybe they are struggling to get through in the moment. When I first became a mom, I had, as you mentioned in the intro there, pretty significant postpartum depression. And it was a really isolating time in my life. And I felt really alone. And I felt that I couldn't speak out about it. I couldn't say anything about it. And so if you can't say anything, you can't get support. And I found over the years when I found my voice and started speaking out, that people want to be there for you. They want to support you. And they're all having such similar experiences. We're all having these parallel experiences right next to each other, but we're all in our own little containers. And so if we don't talk about it, if we don't open a window and look into somebody else's container, we don't realize that we're actually all experiencing the same things and having the same struggles.
Yes.
So I just think 100%. It's really, really powerful to share your truth really authentically, and be raw and be vulnerable and be authentic, because you can help so many people by doing that.
It's so interesting because, for whatever reason, we're conditioned to, in some way, shape, or form, to not always talk authentically or speak our truth. And I don't really know where that comes in to play into life, but it's so eye-opening when you actually do start to speak your truth. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you align with this person, and boom, you align with this person. And you're right. It's like we're all living these parallel lives. And if we just came together more, and I mean, women want to support other women, right? But it's like everybody is so afraid of speaking out and maybe talking about the pain that they've had or that they're going through right now. And it's like, if you just learn to speak to people you feel safe around, or whatever, however that looks for you, the amount of support that you get really does change the trajectory of how you deal with a certain situation. And so I think your podcast is going to be amazing. I love the topics that you're going to speak on. I love the people that you're going to be interviewing. I think all of those are so important, but I really feel like having people share their stories is going to resonate with so many different women and moms and young adults who are going through things where they do really feel alone. So thank you so much for thinking to create a podcast like this, because I really feel like, especially in this day, we need more relationships and community that feels good to us, to help us navigate this crazy life of motherhood. Because honestly, that's what it is. It's like being a mom. There is no manual. Nobody warns you what it's going to be like, because if they did, nobody probably would be a mom, right? But your struggles when they're little are so different than their struggles when they're big, and it's just every season of life. It's like you need different villages to come along with you to help you make it through it without, feeling so alone. So again, thank you so much for creating that.
Thank you.
I heard you mention like the postpartum depression and all of that. And I'm sorry that you did feel alone, because again, that's such an isolating feeling. And you think, oh my gosh, I'm the only one going through this. And in actuality, no, I'm sure the percentage is higher than we even could imagine. But starting a support group for that, for younger women, that's something that I think would be super valuable for people who are just coming out of, birthing a baby. Because whether you have a lot of postpartum or just a little, or you're just starting, it's just nice to have people around you. Talk a little bit about, how you ended up, because, it said you were a nurse, and how you ended up becoming a yoga teacher.
So I became a nurse before I had children, but after college. So I had gone to college. I didn't go for nursing. I had a Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry as my undergraduate degree. And then I taught high school for a little while, and I just felt like that wasn't my path, and I was searching for my path. And I've always been very service oriented and, interested in caring for others. And so I went back to school to become a nurse. And I've never regretted that decision. I still really love serving my patients and caring for them. It's an honor to be with people when they are vulnerable and they do need your help, and to be able to provide that for them is really just a gift to myself. So that was, just absolutely the right decision. But through the years, I had my first daughter, and I struggled with the postpartum depression. Then I had my second child, my son, and I developed chronic migraine. And I became very depressed again because of the amount of pain that I was living in. And so as a result, I really wasn't sure what to do. I had been seeing many doctors and trying different medications, and I saw alternative medicine and acupuncture and chiropractic and everything that you can, possibly imagine to try to tame this dragon. And it was just, nothing was working. And I reached a point really of desperation where I felt like I didn't want to keep living this way. And so I don't know why, but I had an internal voice inside of me say, you need to go to yoga. And yoga is something that I had practiced for on and off for years prior to that, but I was never a regular practitioner. I would go for a while and then I would stop, and I'd go and I'd stop. And, with young children, it's hard to really do anything. But a yoga practice is hard because there's really, it's not like a gym where there's usually a child care center. And so it wasn't something that I had regularly practiced. And
Can I
so,
ask you a question? Because I've had this experience, so I'm just curious if maybe you have too. But you know, years ago, probably prior to kids, and even maybe when I had my kids and they were young, I did try yoga, and I did it, but it was just an exercise.
mhm,
It was just a way to do something, I guess, in movement. But when I became a little bit older and wiser and like just started to care for myself a little bit differently when I resumed yoga in 2020 during the pandemic, the experience has just been so different. Did you feel that at all, like going and then starting again?
So yes, I yes and no. So
Okay.
I was always a very spiritual person from a very young child. I always had that in me for some reason. It's just the way I was built. So I think I always felt that when I went to practice, I felt it at a much deeper level
Okay.
as I became older. But I will also say, um, and I think a lot of your listeners are probably about the same age as you and I are, and something happens in your 40s. You just start changing and you start turning inward more and start reflecting more. And there were books that I had read and shows I had watched and podcasts I had listened to that I just couldn't understand what they were talking about. I was like,
Right.
what are you talking? I don't understand
Right.
what you're saying. And then one great example is Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you were
Uh-huh.
familiar with him or your
Yep.
listeners are familiar with him. And I had read one of his books and I really tried so hard to get through it. I was in my probably late 20s, early 30s, and I could not grasp what he was talking about. And I went back to it. And
Okay.
all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, yes, yes. Like
I
every
get
word in this book, I
it.
get it. Yes, yes, yes. I hear what you're saying now. So, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I
That's
think,
right.
I think there's a component of that too. So did I feel that depth of, of the practice earlier on? I felt it at a much more shallow depth
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
than I felt it going back to it. And even now, this many years later, I've been a regular practitioner now for almost 10 years. I feel it at a much deeper level than I felt it 10 years ago when I started. So
It's interesting, like being like a yoga teacher now, you probably see people coming in at all walks of ages, of life and seasons. And it's like you can relate to them in some way, shape, or form because you've been in all of those, situations. So,
stages and
yeah, stages.
phases.
So,
Yes. The thing
uh,
about yoga is that often people come for the physical practice, that what we
hmm
call the asana. The asana is the physical postures that you take.
hmm
And I call that the gateway, right? Like that's what gets you in the door because you want the physical postures. And some people will stay there and that's fine. But a lot of people, if they come regularly, the postures become secondary to all the other benefits they receive from being there.
yeah. For me, I mean, me personally, yoga has been honestly just a way to connect breath with movement, but by doing that and slowing my system down, it really allows me to have clarity and connect to what is my higher being, which is God. And so it kind of gives me space in my mind to have the downloads that I need to get and the alignment that I need and just whatever, I might not have gotten because my brain was going and so busy, I might not have had that connection and had those thoughts. And so I try and look at it as a practice for me to not only get the movements and the postures and the core and all that stuff, but honestly as a way to connect to my higher being so that I'm coming into my space in my day in a much more level ground, with intention and just a different mindset, to be honest.
Yeah.
So So I choose to do it in the morning. I know some people do it in the afternoon, at night, whatever, but for me, that's how it resonates with me.
And I think that's true for so many people, what you're saying. And I think it's, in my experience, it's dual fold. So it is exactly what you're saying, but it's also where I reconnect with myself.
Right.
Because as women, we're pulled in so many directions. We are partners, we are mothers, we are, if we're working outside the home, we are daughters, we are, you know, the culture tells us we have to be certain things and do certain things and look like certain things and all the things, right? So we're constantly getting input and messages as to who and what we should be and want and do. And that quiet, sacred space is a place to shut all the noise down and return to self, return home. And so the word Om is a mantra, you know, that we use in yoga, and those two letters in the word in the word home, OM is Om, and to return home to self, to really receive the downloads, like you're saying, and what do I want? What do I need? What is my most authentic self? And how can I discover that here and then take it off the four corners of the mat into my everyday life?
Everyday life. Yeah. I like that analogy. Yeah, for sure. That's a good thing. With one of the things you were talking about, mindfulness, how do you take, or what do you have for tools for people listening that are looking to become a little bit more mindful of themselves and where they are at, you kind of in a day-to-day? Do you have certain tools that you use that you like?
I do. I have so many. Some of the, I guess, if your listeners are more beginners, like some of the more beginner tools would be the breath. Okay, so your breath is definitely a gateway to mindfulness. So really just any time in your day when you feel a little anxious or angry or any emotion that you'd rather not be experiencing at that particular moment, you can go to your breath. And if you feel comfortable, you close your eyes and you literally just concentrate on your breath moving in and out of your body. And you may feel it in your nose. You may feel like cool air entering your nose as you inhale and warm air exiting your nose as you exhale. You might feel a rising and falling in your chest, or a rising and falling in your belly. Wherever you feel that sensation the strongest is where you should place your attention. And if you close your eyes and you just do that for a minute, you'll be amazed at how different you feel.
I have, I do a lot of reading and research, and I'm very big on like the fight or flight and parasympathetic and non. And I really feel like breathing for myself and my family and my kids, mostly, it's like that can really switch them from being in that sympathetic fight or flight to bring them back to the parasympathetic. So I think, what you're saying, if you've never tried breathing before, if you've never tried any of the different breathing techniques, because there are a lot out there. So again, it's finding what works for you. But I love the way Katie just said, like, where you feel it in your body is where you need to put your attention. So you can obviously look up different breathing tools. There's like the box breathing, and there's belly breathing, and then there's breathe in and hold it and let release. For me, like when I am in a heightened triggered state, where I'm feeling less, not like I want to be feeling, I do the breathe in, the hold it, and the breathe out. And just by doing that, I feel a shift, in the trigger, like triggering me, or just being able to come back down. So again, if you're a new listener, or if you're a listener and you're new to this, check out some of the breath work strategies. We can even drop some in the show notes, so that if you're new to it, I'll give you a couple of links based off maybe something Katie might have, or I can find something that can show you some breath work tools that you might be able to experiment with, because this is all about doing what's right for you and your body.
Yes.
All right. So what's something
Absolutely.
else?
So another breath technique that works really well
Hmm.
is, and I will mention also that part of my podcast, at the end of every podcast, I will be
Okay.
giving you a mindfulness technique. So
Oh,
every
good.
week, yeah, there'll be just like a little tidbit that you can, try on for size and see if it fits into your life and how it makes you feel. But another really great one, and it's, scientifically proven to get you out of fight or flight, is to breathe out longer than you breathe in. So you can count
Okay.
and you can breathe in, let's say for a count of 4, and breathe out for a count of 6. You don't have to use those exact numbers, whatever, is comfortable in your body for breath counts, just as long as your out is longer than you're in.
Okay.
So, several rounds of breathing in and breathing out at a much slower, longer pace, you will absolutely decrease that sympathetic nervous system and get much more relaxed. Another
Okay.
one would be your senses. So basically, in yoga philosophy, and I really think actually in just like generalized therapy, they teach you this too, is that all suffering occurs because our mind is not in the present moment. We
Yes.
are either thinking about something that happened in the past, or we are preparing for something that's going to happen in the future, but we're not here and now. And it can be really hard. The mind is crazy, right? In yoga, we call it the monkey mind. It never stops moving. It's always climbing around. It's just, won't stop, right?
Right.
So how do we stop it? How do we, and we can't stop it. That's honestly
No.
God's honest truth. The truth is that the brain was created to think. That was what it is evolved over all of these many years to do, is to think. So you wouldn't ask any other organ to not do what it's supposed to do. You don't tell your heart to stop beating, right? You don't tell your kidneys to stop filtering urine. You don't tell your stomach to stop digesting, right? We don't tell it to that, but we want to close our eyes and say, stop thinking, brain. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. The brain is going to think. So you have to accept that. That's number one. Go into a space of acceptance that I know I'm not going to be perfect at this. I know that even if I try to focus my attention on something, my attention is going to drift. It's going to wander, and it's going to wander frequently, and that's okay. I'm just going to bring it back when I notice. But what you can do to try to help you with a little centering is using your 5 senses. So we experience the world through our senses. And so if we want to come into the present moment, we can use our senses to bring us there. So there's a technique called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And have you heard of this?
Yes. I call it, I mean, I talk to people, I call it grounding yourself.
Grounding.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So you can do this in any way you want, but you use your 5 senses. So you might say, I'm going to look for 5 things. So that's your sight. I'm going to look around and I notice, oh, that's a beautiful tree. And oh, that person's walking their dog, or oh, look, there's some lint on the floor that needs to be cleaned up. Yeah. whatever, whatever you notice with your eyes, 5. Then maybe 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can feel, 2 things, what am I missing, that you can smell, and maybe 1 thing that you're tasting. And that will, if you're in a really tumultuous internal state, it just kind of quickly helps you bring you into this present moment. And the present moment
It's split. It's a split
is
moment.
it's a split moment, right? It's never the same. It's constantly changing, but it's the only place we really have, and it's the only place that we can take effective action from.
Yes.
So if you want to be more productive and you want to be less stressed and more peaceful, you need to do your best to be in the present moment, and then have self-compassion when you realize that you're not.
Right. And the whole thing about like the monkey mind and moving and their mind's supposed to, I feel like people who are either new to meditation or haven't really gotten into meditation or tried it and are like, not for me. A lot of times it's because they don't understand truly how to meditate. And people think, I can't sit quietly for 20 minutes. What are you doing? Like, and the goal of meditation isn't to quiet your mind completely all the way without anything happening, but it is just a way to bring awareness to where your mind is. And if you're wanting to focus on something, and your mind starts wandering somewhere else, like you said, you just bring it back to whatever it was at that moment that you're meditating on, and that can be different in a lot of different ways. And there's
Right.
lots of different people who teach meditation. So if you are someone who's interested in meditation, if you look up one person and you try it and they don't align with you, that doesn't mean all meditation won't work for you. Just hop around until you find, I mean, it's taken me years to find somebody who truly could affect me, I would say, or get to me, or like help me figure it out. And Kathy was it. You know, she was the one person that. But since then, I've dabbled in a couple of other things, and I'm able to receive it differently because I now know what works for me, I guess. So again, if you're someone that's out there and you're new to all of this, experimentation is my best advice, you know, for any practice that you're just starting, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, when you eat cereal, I don't know why this just came to my mind, but it's like not everybody likes one particular cereal, and there's a bunch of cereals to try. So it's the same thing. It's like you got to try different things on to see what feels good for you ultimately.
Yeah. And it's not even just the different person who's presenting the meditation, but there are many forms of meditation.
Yes.
So there are many different ways
Right.
of focusing the mind. So ultimately, you know, meditation is an attempt to focus the mind, and you can do that through mantra. You can do that by focusing on the breath. You can do that through visualization. There are many, many different forms. You can do it through breath work. Some people are like, I cannot sit still. There's no way that I can just sit there. There's moving meditation. There's yoga
moving meditation.
is a moving
I think
meditation.
for me, Kathy's more of the visual.
She is.
And so that's, I think, why it resonated so much with me, is because it always told my mind what to do. So I was still doing something. So it didn't go stray off as much. And I think I liked that because I wasn't having to think about, okay, am I going out and coming back and going? It was just like, so I think for me personally, the visualization was a good type of meditation for myself to be able to have the impact that I wanted meditation to have for me.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what we're saying, right? So you got to go towards what works for you and where you find that piece. And visualization for me is actually really hard. I just am not a good visualizer.
Right.
But I still try to do it a lot. And actually I've been trying to do it more in my life because I think there are a lot of benefits to it. So when you're starting out, I would say go with the one that feels the easiest for you because you're new and you're just trying to learn this and get a rhythm going. But then as you progress, you might decide you want to challenge yourself and try to do some of these forms that are harder for you, because it'll help you grow. Anytime you do something that's harder for you, it'll help you grow. So, you know, just start small, start with easy, start with a short time frame, and start with what speaks to you the most. And the other piece, I guess I wanted to add to that was that every time your mind wanders and you become aware of the fact that your mind wandered, it's actually a gift because you get to see what your mind was thinking. So, you know, we are not our thoughts. We are not our mind. We are the witnesser. We're the observer of our thoughts and our mind. So if you are not paying attention, if you're in autopilot, you're having all these thoughts. It's not that you're not having them. They're all there. You just aren't like recognizing that they're there, but they're still impacting you. So when you start becoming the observer of the thoughts and you see that your thoughts have drifted, and then you're like, oh, look at that thing that I was thinking. It helps you to like understand yourself better.
Yeah, that's true.
Know where you are. Like, am I beating myself up? Am I talking negatively to myself? Am I judging myself? Am I judging somebody else? Am I just like an anxious mess, like thinking about the 24,000 things I have to do after I stand up off the
seat? Am I stressing about something that really isn't as big of a stressor, or I don't need to make it as big of a stressor as it needs, or as it seems to be? So those are all wonderful things to think about, and reframing things in a different way, that your mind isn't just running off to nothing. You know, it's running off. And you're right. We have all these thoughts all day long, and how many of those thoughts do you even remember?
Right.
You know,
and even though you might not be able to consciously recall them, they are impacting your behaviors.
100%.
Right.
One of the things that I don't think we've talked about it yet, but one of the things that you had said to me was, you know, being a nurse and growing up in like with health, being health conscious and all of this, all the things, the practices, all of the things that you were doing were all physical things, and the yoga and the other things were not a part of that. And so talk a little bit about that, how including that into your like holistic being kind of solidified maybe a better like circle instead of just having like a one-sided um, health and wellness plan or like lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would have in my younger years put health into buckets. So there was exercise was a bucket, nutrition was a bucket, sleep was a bucket. I don't know if I even had any other buckets other than those. Maybe when I got to me like in my 30s, I would have said stress management would have been a bucket. But then I realized that I was missing probably the most important bucket, or what I would say is the bucket that holds all the other buckets,
Mm-hmm.
which is my mental health and my spirituality. Now, that can be whatever it is for each individual. I don't personally partake in any specific organized religion for myself, but you can partake in any form of religion and still have spirituality. And so that was really missing from my life. I had tried to fit into a specific religion for a long time that wasn't working for me. And then I just kind of like threw my hands up in the air and I was like, this is not working and I'm not doing it. And I left it behind. And it was a huge missing link because it really did impact my mental health. I didn't have a way of coping with the difficult things that were coming down the pike in my life. I didn't have a community that could help me through those difficult things. I didn't have a way of reframing. I didn't have internal or external support.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important because life is life. It's a constant series of ups and downs. And I don't think anyone escapes this life without facing some pretty significant challenges. And when they come, if you don't have something to help you, it's really hard. And it limits your ability to get through them in a healthy way. And so that was really missing for me. And
it's so amazing though that all of the challenges that you were facing, that still showed up for you in a time that you had the brain with and capacity to hear it and then do something about it. And so that's amazing, and I'm glad that you're sharing that, because I think a lot of people look at wellness and health as those just little buckets, and they do forget some of the other pieces that kind of brings it all together. And so noticing that and then taking action on it really does make a difference in your overall well-being, right? Not just certain little buckets. So again, for anybody listening, if you're someone who has some little buckets but don't have like all the buckets connected in a way, then that might be something that you should get curious about and find where the missing link might be for you. And if that's in faith and spirituality, then look into that. If that is putting yourself first and taking care of yourself, I think we as moms, and Katie and I talked about this earlier, but we have all these people telling us what a good mom is and how a good mom should be and what we should do and all of this, and none of that talk from others really includes a lot of take care of yourself. And so that's something that with my podcast, and I believe Katie has the same philosophy. It's like, if we can teach people how to put themselves first, they will definitely be able to show up better for their family and the people around them and the people who they're surrounded with. And that takes a little bit of work and effort, but it's definitely worth it in the end, to be able to show up differently for yourself first and foremost, but then also for your kids. So one of the things, would you have anything you want to add to that?
I fully, wholeheartedly agree with you. And I guess the only thing I'd like to add is that I don't think we can fully embrace any of those other buckets until we take care of the big bucket, until we take care of this mindfulness, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, mental health bucket. Because if I'm not feeling good internally, if I'm not feeling good about myself, or I'm super anxious or stressed or, worried, all those things, I am going to reach for the bad foods, right? I'm going to crave the sugar and the carbs and all those things because I'm trying to fill something. I'm trying to fill a void that is not fillable by food, right? And I'm not going to sleep well because my mind is churning and churning and churning about all the things that I'm concerned about. And when I think about exercising, I'm probably pretty drained, right? Because all this internal dialogue, this stress-based internal dialogue, is exhausting. And the idea of then going to work out probably sounds pretty unappealing. So I think that, taking care of this whole self, this internal world that we have, then helps us take care of ourselves in the more external pieces, the pieces that we see, like diet and exercise and sleep.
Right. And just to be clear, Katie and I both, had this conversation earlier, neither one of us are against therapies. We're not against medication. There is a time and place for all of that. And a lot of times those things are needed to be able to then take steps in other areas so that, you have a balance, so you're balanced out a little bit before you can start to really address some of the underlying things in the health and wellness. So please remember, like, if you are dealing with something, or if your child is dealing with something and you're dealing with them, those therapies are super important. And those, practitioners that can prescribe medications, they have a time and a place. We're just saying to don't forget about the rest of the picture, because the rest of the picture really paints something much bigger than just that small little perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And as we discussed earlier, I have a daughter who has really struggled, and which she has been through a ton of therapy and has been on medication. And I am fully behind all of those methodologies. This is an adjunct. And for some people, it's enough. And for other people, it's a nice addition to therapies and medications.
Very good. Okay, so lastly, I ask all the people that I interview about their non-negotiables, because I think that having non-negotiables are really important for each person individually, because those are things that we know that are tools and or habits that we've created that make us feel our best. So I'm always curious, because I have my own set, but I'm always curious to find out what other people have as their non-negotiables. So in your daily life, what are just a couple of things that you've created into habits because and you don't really skip them often? Obviously life happens sometimes, but you mainly don't skip them because you know how good it makes you feel.
So sleep is probably my number one non-negotiable. I do not mess with my sleep.
Okay.
Everyone who knows me knows that sleep is an absolute priority for me. Exercise is also a huge non-negotiable for me. Meditation is a big non-negotiable. And when I say exercise, that includes yoga, but there are other forms of exercise that I also partake in, but that I kind of encompass all of that. And healthy eating. I really can't function at my best unless I am putting good things into my body. So those are all non-negotiables for me.
That's awesome. We didn't really talk much about food or anything, but just curious, like, what is one of your favorite healthy meals that you eat?
I love anything curry based. So I love a good chickpea curry. I love a good yogurt parfait with just like berries and nuts and seeds and that kind of thing. So, again, busy mom. So things
That's
are
right.
quick. I love some good roasted salmon with veggies on the side, or like a bowl. I love like a brown rice bowl with like whatever my protein is and my veggies. So
I love it. They're all easy, they're all quick, but they all sound delicious, and I'm hungry. So that sounds amazing. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'm so looking forward to your podcast. I think that you're going to be able to share a lot of good knowledge and education and support for people that are, in this life of, being a mom and having maybe children, that are struggling in some way, shape, or form. I think that your guests that you're going to be interviewing are really going to lend to give a lot of good education, of different things. And I think, again, the more we can come up with different perspectives and learn different perspectives for ourselves and for our kids, just the more options we have. And to be honest, what I have definitely learned over the years is we ourselves are the only ones that are our own advocate for our children. And we have to do the best thing that we know as a parent for ourselves, but also for our kids. And that's using your voice. And that entails learning a lot. So I'm super excited. And I definitely will be sharing when you're about to go live. I'll share on all my social media. But for all the things we've talked about today, if there's anything that we can link below in the show notes. You can check those out down there. We'll talk a little bit after and come up with a few things. But until next time, I just want to say I hope that you guys have a great day and a rest of your week goes swimmingly. So we'll talk soon. Bye.